Good morning. The big banks must be calmer this morning about cryptos, which show that they have a steep learning curve. Coinbase has hired a former SEC senior official as its VP of Capital Markets, this just ahead of its IPO. Let's do the breakdown. The Russell yesterday was alone amidst the red, adding a percent 72, while the Dow and S&P lost a third. A host of reasons for this, not least the 10 years 1.74% yield, putting that at a 14-month high. Today we're expecting Joe Biden to reveal his, now it's $2.25 trillion infrastructure deal. It's expected to cover roads, bridges, ports, and I don't see anything on trains, but the payment protection program is being extended until the end of June. Biden has announced that he will not be funding economic recovery plans by taxing the rich. Elizabeth Warren, if you might remember, last month proposed a 3% wealth tax with, I think, an additional 2% if you're making $50 billion. But that goes against the political grain, Dems or Republicans. The dollar continues up after the conference board yesterday delivered a 109.7-point consumer confidence index for March, and January house prices improved marginally to 12% year on year. European benchmarks closed up yesterday, led by the DAX's 1.3% increase. EU figures yesterday show March sentiment markers slightly up to flat. Industrial expectations are at 2 points. That's up from February's -3. Meanwhile, Germany's preliminary CPI for this month is up to 1.7% year on year, and England's Q4 GDP reading today surprised to the upside with a better than expected 7.3% contraction year on year. The UK's Home Office announced yesterday that 10 EU states, including Germany and France, are halting their extradition agreements with the Isle. Ahead today, consumer inflation from the Union, France, and Italy, and employment from Germany. All this in the next hour. This morning finds major Asian indices down, except Australia and New Zealand, which are up 1.2 and 0.8% respectively. Building approvals in Australia surprised to the upside with a 21% increase following a 19% contraction in January. The yen lost 0.5% during the session after industrial productions for March came in at a 2.1% contraction. And in China, March manufacturing data overnight shows a 1-point improvement to 51.9, reportedly expanding at a 3-month record rate. The composite PMI is up 4 points and non-manufacturing 5. Tonight, Japan will be delivering a host of manufacturing data at 10 to midnight, and at 1/2 past, Australia's retail and trade balance. At 1:45, Caixin's manufacturing PMI for China. Finally, a university research lab has published a database about China loan requirements to about 100 developing nations. China has become the world's biggest creditor with 65% of official bilateral debt throughout Africa, Asia, South and Central America, and Eastern Europe. The agreements include confidentiality clauses, prioritize repayment clauses, and a prohibition in restructuring the loans, especially through other creditors. So don't say you weren't warned. Oil is surprising us this morning with a 0.5% increase, despite yesterday's disappointing 3.9 million barrel stock rise by API numbers. Also, a committee hearing before tomorrow's OPEC Plus meeting has downgraded demand projections for the coming year. Bitcoin is northward bound again as PayPal announces it will now allow U.S. users to use cryptos, and gold continues down for what Reuters is calling its worst quarter since 2016. On the weekly chart, we can see we're still in the 1680-1750 range from last year. Break to the downside, we could go as low as 1550. On the hourly chart, we have a tragically oversold RSI that seems to be recovering. It's still too early to know if we're in another bull trap, or this time we'll finally reverse, because the main culprit here is just have to wait and see at what point investors start losing their national pride. U.S. mortgage and home sales data later today, PMIs tomorrow, Friday's NFP. Lots of data to keep an eye on. As its workers begin to unionize, Amazon has announced a new assistance program for space-oriented startups. Xiaomi is launching a foldable smartphone, and Google is donating a whole $25 million to a European fund to fight fake news, said the guy doing his financial bulletin in a tracksuit. Earnings coming in from BlackBerry just as this year's first quarterly season peeps beyond the horizon. We're looking there at a Q4 drop in revenue to $210 million and a 56-cent loss per share. And okay, I fell for it. Volkswagen this morning is telling us that the Volkswagen thing was an April Fool's Day marketing stunt, and they got me. I guess that's because yesterday wasn't April Fool's, punks. See you tomorrow.